Okay, welcome everybody to the Council of the City and County of Swansea meeting. The first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Mr Evans, please.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I have apologies from Councillors Rebecca Fogarty, Paxton Hood-Williams, Mike Lewis and Francesca O'Brien.
Councillor Lewis.
Councillor David Phillips.
Thank you. Anybody online? No? Okay. This item is disclosures of personal and prejudicial interests, and can I call on Debbie Smith?
Agenda items this evening. You do not need to declare an interest if you're a member of the Standards Committee or a member of the Scrutiny Committee or any of the work panels or committees under the umbrella of scrutiny. So unless anybody has any declarations of interest on any other matters, please.
Right. It's on. Yeah, I think it's working now. Thank you. The declaration of interest relates to question 2 in the Council's questions on shared prosperity funding, as my employer receives funding for that. So I've declared an interest. I won't take part of any of that question.
Councillor, I've forgotten your name again. Sorry. Sam.
God, it's because my name had been forgotten. Like, question 1, the answer refers to the innovation matrix, which is part of the UWTSD estate, and I work for UWTSD.
You could just come.
Okay, we move on to the next item then, and that's the minutes. It's to approve and sign the minutes, and they're on pages 1 through to 11. If you want me to go through them page for page, it's page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11. All in agreement? Yep. Okay. The next item is written responses to questions asked at the last ordinary meeting of council, and that's on pages 12 and 13. And the next item is the announcements of me, the presiding member, and I haven't got many announcements, but the first one is I'd like to congratulate Paul Karabadak for the Paris Paralympics in 2024. Paul Karabadak is a table tennis playing Paralympian from Wanaloy. He is a former attendee of the Swansea Friends of the Young Disabled, and he has won over 100 medals and has been playing competitively for Great Britain since 2001. He recently won a bronze in doubles table tennis at the Paris Olympics 2024. And can I pass on my congratulations to Paul? Okay, thank you. And the next one, we have a welcome to the Emma Cole, the head teacher of Bishop Vaughan Catholic School, and the pupils from school who are going to give us a brief presentation. And item 2 is the other one. Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. I've got to make a mistake every time, Rob. Don't worry about it. I'm calling you, Rob. Thank you.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I've just a few announcements to make for today. Firstly, to congratulate the staff for their hard work in supporting the delivery of the opening of the new Albert Hall. Members will know that that facility opened earlier this week formally. Our teams have been busy supporting Simon Baston and his team to deliver that facility. And it's great to see the Albert Hall, which has lain derelict for nearly 2 decades, open and available to the public. For those who haven't visited, it has a food court and performance space which can hold a capacity of 600 people. Above that, our new A-grade office space, and above that is an apart hotel. And again, it's really important that we bring and save our historic buildings, but also bring them back into useful use for the city centre. Coming shortly after that will be the opening of the Palace Theatre on the 7th of November. And again, I know members of Scrutiny as well as members of the council have had an opportunity to visit that facility during its regeneration. It has been a real challenge for us, a very unique building, but one that I'm very pleased that we've been able to again to intervene and save, and again look forward to being present for the opening of that on the 7th of November. And of course, on top of that will come the opening of 7172 Kingsway. I know we have questions about the city deal tonight, but that is a development directly linked to the delivery of the city deal. That is coming to its final phase of fit out. And when these three buildings are open, there'll be over 1,000 jobs secured and created in the city centre, which will mean obviously continued investment, prosperity and a good growth for our city centre, which I'm sure we all want to see. Well, I say I'm sure we all want to see, because I have to say, Chair, I was also quite disappointed to read some comments in the press this week from members of the Uplands Party with regard to the Skyline project. Now, there were some statements made in that article, which I assume, given the reporter, who is usually very accurate, were reflective of what the councillors had said. And this was a suggestion which I know officers of this council had previously corrected, that by supporting the delivery of the Skyline project, we were diverting resources that could otherwise be provided to roads, schools or other services in the council. That is absolutely untrue. That is not the way in which funding works. Councillor Rice, who the person associated with the comment should know better, being a previous Liberal Democrat cabinet member for finance in a previous administration, should know the details and the difference between capital investments, loans and revenue. But I'm very pleased to see, again, continued efforts by Skyline to take their proposal forward. It's not a council scheme, but it again is one that we welcome and support. We expect to see a planning application coming from Skyline in due course. And obviously, we have discussed with Welsh Government support that can be provided to that project. It will create many jobs for the local economy, as well as bringing in nearly 500,000 visitors every year in its first year of operation. So if we are serious, as we are on this side of the chamber, about creating jobs, growth and prosperity, then schemes like Skyline do need to be ones that successfully delivered in our city. I know that we want to take this city forward. I just wish Councillor Rice and his colleagues in the Uplands Party wanted the same and not to hold the city back. But Chair, very pleased to see the delivery of the projects we promised, and 2025 looks even better. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. After jumping the gun, I will now move to the proper presentation. It's a presentation from Bishop Bourne Catholic School for the Festival of Peace. Can I welcome Emma Pole, head teacher of Bishop Bourne Catholic School, and the pupils from the school who are going to give us a brief presentation and sing songs relating to the Festival of Peace. So over to you, Emma. Thank you.
Our sincere thanks for this invitation to be with you this evening. It is an honour to be here to tell you a little bit about our work at Bishop Vaughan and about what we stand for as a community. We are a diverse community, and we celebrate that diversity and our cultural heritages, knowing they make the school the very special place that it is. This is done most notably in our annual Festival of Peace.
We begin with a short item from our small section of our school choir. As you will hear, it is sung in several parts, creating harmony. It is the fact that those parts are different from one another, but working together sympathetically, that makes the sound more special. This too is how our school works. We do not have to be the same as one another to live and learn together daily. Our school is the richer because we are diverse. Someone wise once said that if we all sang the same note, we would never have harmony. In our school, we believe that harmony is beautiful and diversity is to be celebrated.
As you have heard, and as you can see, Bishop Vaughan is a culturally diverse school. Over 67 languages are spoken in the homes of its pupils. This for us is a celebration, cause of our celebration. In an increasingly divided, polarized world, it is more important than ever to understand that the richest communities are built not on being identical to one another, but on bringing together those with varying experiences, histories, and perspectives. In doing so, we learn to understand one another and the wider world better.
In 2021, when the conflict between Russia and Ukraine broke out, many young people nationally and indeed internationally were fearful about what the future held. Our first Festival of Peace was a response to that. It was intended to bring reassurance and hope to our pupils.
That first festival was also intended to be a celebration of our own truly international school, in which we live, learn, and work together daily, harmoniously, productively, and with respect.
Our festivals are week-long celebrations. In the preceding weeks, each department in the school works on a contribution towards an exhibition which is held in our school's main hall. These exhibits explore the festival theme through the lens of each academic discipline.
Themes have included peace near and far, peace, light and hope, and peace, the power of words. Departmental contributions over the years have included large art installations of symbols associated with peace, artwork and writing looking at great speechmakers who have advocated for peace, and this year the science department creating a giant periodic table, in which pupils replace the chemical elements with words associated with creating the conditions for peace.
In addition, and lending great vibrance to the event, every single cultural identity that makes up our school is given its own stall to decorate as it wishes, with many of us creating displays about our family heritage and bringing in artifacts such as ornaments, flags, and treasured items from our homes. We can wear our cultural clothing if we wish for the duration of the festival. This is special for us as we feel proud of who we are and what we bring to our school community. And this is visually very evident during the festival week.
We are a school of sanctuary, supporting our city's status as a city of sanctuary. The festivals focus on providing welcome to all and on valuing the experience of every person is for us an opportunity to put our values into action.
In a typical festival week, all pupils visit the exhibition over 2 days, parents and carers during the evenings, and there is a music and dance closing celebration on the Friday. In the middle of the week, we have our main celebration. This coincides with the International Day of Peace, and we welcome visitors from a wide range of organisations, from Welsh Government to anti-racist organisations, community groups, the Lord Lieutenant, religious groups, the Lord Mayor, clergy, other schools, and many more. We have been delighted each year to welcome members of this council and honoured that the leader of the council, whom I had the privilege of showing around the exhibition, extended this invitation to us to share a description of the event with you, his council colleagues.
Following a guided tour of the exhibition, our visitors have a short concert programme with items from our choir for chatting with pupils over refreshments. We are aware that your time this evening has many demands upon it, but in replicating a little of the festival experience for you, we would like to close this presentation on a fittingly harmonious note, emphasizing again our firm belief that difference is indeed to be celebrated, alongside the values that bind us together as a community, living and learning together each day.
Thank you for listening and for your invitation to this meeting. It has been an honor to be here. From all of us at Bishop Vaughan, peace be with you.
Okay, can I thank you to the pupils and the staff of Bishop Vaughan Catholic Schools for their presentation and the songs relating to the Festival of Peace. There are a number of different languages spoken at the school, and this presentation was about the unifying message of peace. Recently, the leader attended the school to witness the Festival of Peace and was treated to a showcase of beautiful costumes, choir singing, and information stands about the countries of heritage, vibrancy, energy, and colours spurred to the school. Can I pass on my congratulations? I think it's all for us to learn a lesson here for the way they all work together, and I think we can all learn from that. So thank you all very much for your presentation. It was amazing. Can I hand you over to the leader?
Yeah. Presiding member, if I could, yeah, it was a privilege to attend the ceremony and the event at Bishop Vaughan School. For those who weren't there, I know Councillor Hopkins was with me, the Lord Mayor was with me, and a number of other members. We got a chance to really tour the world in a day. It was brilliant. And as I said, 67 different languages being spoken in the school. I think Mrs. Poole and the staff have done an amazing job together with the pupils to create that event, because as a city, we're proud to be Wales's first human rights city, but you see it lived real in Bishop Vaughan School. And I think, bringing it to life, you should be really proud of everything you achieved there. I'm very grateful to all the pupils who manned the stalls, for Aaron for showing me around. And I actually got to try food on the Chinese stall that I hadn't tried since we were in Nantong. So it was a really good, nice delicacy, fantastic event. And again, I think the thing that hit home with me was the line that we heard again tonight. If we all sing the same note, there is no harmony. And I think that is absolutely true. So thank you all. You should all be very proud. We are very proud of you. So thank you very much.
Just want to say thank you again. I know our pupils have found it a privilege to be here and to present to you. And may I just extend the warmest of welcomes to any councillors that would like to visit our next annual Festival of Peace. I'll make sure the invitation comes in good time. We hope to welcome lots of you. Thank you, Leader.
I think we all enjoyed that. Was amazing. Absolutely. Okay, we move on to the next item then, and it's public questions. Are there any, Mr. Evans? None. Okay, thank you. The next item is the Standards Committee Annual Report, and can I call on Mr. Mike Lewis, please, to lead us through the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I'm grateful for the opportunity to present the Standards Committee Annual Report for the year 23-24. I'm pleased to report that conduct amongst elected members remains very high. The annual report has been distributed in advance, and you will see the committee's work during the year is largely detailed in section 2. This includes a summary of hearings held during the year, and I'm pleased to be able to report the number of referrals from the Ombudsman's Office remains very low. The committee reviews its procedures after each hearing is completed, and also after any appeals to the Adjudication Panel for Wales, to ensure the procedure is still fit for purpose and to capture any learning. I want again to acknowledge the positive engagement of group leaders, and even before it was made a statutory requirement under the Local Government and Election Wales Act, I believe Swansea was in a good place as far as engagement with group leaders was concerned. Finally, I would like to thank colleagues on the committee for their support and active participation throughout the year. And I also want to place on record my appreciation to the Democratic Services Department for all they do to ensure the smooth operation of the committee. Unless I can help you further, Presiding Member, that's all I want to say in terms of highlights in this year's annual report.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Leader?
Yeah, thank you, Presiding Member. Can I thank Mr. Lewis and the members of the Standards Committee for the report back and for the work that they continue to do. As I said at the committee, I look forward to visiting again next year and not being summoned to the committee. It's always better that way around, I think. But thank you very much for the work you do.
Holly?
It's always better to be invited in some months, isn't it? But no, thank you very much, Mr. Lewis. I think it's important that we have that report annually and we understand what's going on. And it's nice to see that the discipline and the behaviour of this group of people is excellent. May not always last, by the way.
They don't always behave in the chamber, mind.
Down to the Presiding Member.
Can I thank you, Mr. Lewis? And you're more than welcome to stay, but you're also more than welcome to leave if you don't need to be here. Okay, so thank you very, very much for your report. Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is item number 10, and that's the annual report of the Director of Social Services. And I'd like to call on Mr. David House, please.
Thank you, Presiding Member. This is my 8th annual report to Council. Sets out my analysis of the Council's performance in delivering its social services functions for the year 23-24. This remains an incredibly challenging period for our population. The impact of COVID and subsequent cost of living crisis continues to play through, with increased levels of vulnerability and need amongst children and families, adults with care and support needs, and unpaid carers. Demand for our social care services is at unprecedented levels, exacerbated by challenges across health services, mirroring some of the issues faced by our schools, and with definite links to current increased levels of homelessness. All this at a time when public service funding is severely constrained, when inflationary pressures within social care and other services are running at least 4 percentage points above the published CPI rate. Perfect storm indeed. So it's more important than ever to recognise and celebrate what we do well, and to use those strengths as a basis for planning how best we meet those undoubted future challenges with hope and optimism. With that in mind, I'm going to remind Council of how far we have come on our improvement journey towards being the best that we can be before setting out what more we have to do. I'll turn first to Children's Services. It was about 12 years ago when the Council first set out its strategic ambition to reshape children's services around supporting more children to remain living safely within their families and local communities. We were the first local authority in Wales to call this our Safe Lack Reduction Strategy. This term has been hijacked since, and we've stopped using it. At that time, Swansea had about 15% more looked after children than Cardiff, despite that Cardiff is twice our size. Last year, 12 years on, we have 50% fewer looked after children than Cardiff. 12 years ago, we had approximately 3,000 children open to statutory children's services at any given time, no prevention and early support for families. Last year, we had about 1,300 children open to statutory children's services and about 1,000 children utilising support from our early help hubs. 12 years ago, exploitation outside of the family home, whether criminal or sexual, was either a matter for the police or often went completely overlooked. Last year, our sector-leading contextual safeguarding, missing or exploitation team, alongside our youth services, youth justice team and other partners, provided intervention that helped create safety for literally thousands of potentially at-risk children and young people. 12 years ago, the likelihood of a pregnant mum being supported to safely maintain safe care of her baby in circumstances where safeguarding risks were high was exponentially lower than last year, where our award-winning integrated social care and health jigsaw service successfully supported over 100 families to retain the safe care of their babies. 12 years ago, many of those mums would have had their babies removed immediately following birth, adding to the trauma for that mum and reducing the likelihood that she would access any support for herself, either as an individual or as a potential future parent. Last year, our award-winning Born into Care approach meant that the experience of mums and dads where a baby has to be removed was planned weeks in advance, allowing for those post-birth support to create positive memories for those parents, providing the foundation for ongoing support for those parents to address whatever issues they still face. There are many more examples of extraordinary practice and performance across your children's services contained within the report. I commend the leadership of Julie Davis, Head of Children's Services, and her senior management team, particularly pay tribute to the hundreds of social workers, alternatively qualified staff, the full range of ancillary and business support staff, our foster carers, residential care staff, third and independent sector partners, volunteers, and parent carers. I'll turn now to adult and tackling poverty services. 12 years ago, there was a reasonably clear distinction between needs designated as requiring health care and needs designated as requiring social care. Last year, I visited many of our services, including shadowing our domiciliary care staff on some of their runs. The type of specialist care that our staff now provide in people's homes, in our day services, and in our residential care homes is a world apart from 12 years ago. That care would have been provided by a nurse and often would have been provided in a hospital setting. 12 years ago, we didn't provide any reablement support. If it was determined you needed care, that's what you got. As a consequence, the reablement service supported 80% of their residents to return home without any need for ongoing care. One of those residents was so poorly when discharged from hospital, she was placed on a palliative care pathway. I met that individual on the day she was due to be discharged. She returned home fully independent. 12 years ago, individuals with dementia would likely end up staying in hospital for an extended period, and the needs would escalate, making it more and more difficult to find a long-term placement. Last year, we opened a residential reablement service in T1 to mirror the work in Bonamine House, but focused on individuals with dementia. 50% of the residents accessing that pilot service have successfully returned home, avoiding the need for a long-term residential placement. 12 years ago, we didn't have a tackling poverty strategy. We didn't have a range of tackling poverty and associated prevention and wellbeing services. Last year, our tackling poverty and associated prevention and wellbeing services supported thousands of individuals and carers with a range of targeted prevention and more general wellbeing support. Our approach to prevention and wellbeing was commended as best practice by Care Inspectorate Wales, and our rate of recourse to all forms of managed care are below the Welsh average. I again commend the leadership of Amy Hawkins, Head of Adult Services, Tackling Poverty, Helen St John, Head of Integrated Services, their senior management teams, and again pay credit to our adult services, social workers, alternatively qualified staff, commissioning teams, ancillary and business support staff, our domiciliary, residential and day services staff, tackling poverty teams, third and independent sector partners, our volunteers and unpaid carers. However, despite the fabulous improvements we have made and the remarkable skill, resilience and commitment of all those wonderful staff, there are considerable challenges to be met now and into the future. The funding to maintain what we do now isn't sufficient. For the past 2 years, the Council has drawn down on unprecedented levels of one-off reserves. At some point, additional sustainable funding will need to replace this reliance on diminishing reserves, or the local authority will need to limit its care offer. Temptation may be to row back on the innovation that this Council has championed over the past decade, particularly in its approach to promoting prevention and early intervention. However, to do so runs the obvious risk of reversing the progress made on lowering recourse to preventable managed care. In purely financial terms, this would seem to be a self-defeating strategy, would certainly undermine the Council's proud tradition of supporting the well-being of our population as best we can. These are incredible dilemmas for Council to grapple with over the next few years. One of this Council's great strengths, recognised by Care Inspectorate Wales, is the cross-party political understanding of and commitment to meeting its social services responsibilities as best it can. That commitment, plus our track record of innovation and best practice, in my view, leaves us as well placed as any council to meet those challenges of the next few years. I'll finish by thanking our responsible cabinet members, Councillors Gibbard, Anthony and Gwilym, for your support and leadership. Also, continued thanks to the chairs and members of the dedicated social services scrutiny performance committees for your curiosity and constructive challenge. Also, my thanks to the Chief Exec and wider CMT for your continued advice, support and collegiate approach. My final thanks, repeated thanks, is to the staff across the Social Services Directorate. I have worked in social care services for 30 years. It remains the case that your work knocks anything that I've ever done into a cocked hat. Thank you, Presiding Member. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. House, for a good report there. Can I call on Councillor Gibbard, please?
Thank you, Presiding Member. I just wanted to put on record my thanks to Dave for this report, but for his day in, day out leadership of our excellent workforce. He's really sets the tone from the top, and that flows through all of our staff in both adult and child and family services. I think that as Dave has explained, co-production, innovation, and the principles of prevention are really at the heart of everything we do, and we've got so much to be proud of. But Dave is really right to be honest and realistic about the challenges that we are facing. I'm really grateful for the support that, as David said, the scrutiny panels have shown over the year in being a critical friend to the departments, and long may it continue.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbard. Can I have somebody to second, please? Leader.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. If I could just formally second. I also wanted to pay tribute to Mr. Howes, to Amy, to Julie, and all of the teams that are out there working day in, day out to support people. Again, specific and special thanks should go to Mr. Howes for the effort that he's put in. I know he's regarded highly across Wales, and we are very lucky to have him in Swansea as our Director of Social Services. As Mr. Howes alluded to, whilst we've seen inflation fall, the reality is that service inflation is still stubbornly high at around 6%, and that is creating significant pressures across social care in Wales and in England. So members will know we added significant amounts of additional cash into social care in the budget, but we had to make another decision at first quarter to put in another further £6 million as one-off money to help with the pressures. I know other councils are grappling with exactly the same pressures across the UK, and it really is now for both governments in Westminster and in Cardiff to really tackle the imbalance in the health and social care system, because the work that Mr. Howes and his teams do not only keep people well and living independently for longer, keep people out of hospital so they don't need the expensive treatment that they otherwise would have to have, but also help get people out of hospital quickly so that they can begin their recovery and reablement. So it is hugely important that social care gets the funding it deserves in the coming years.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I just wanted to say thank you as well for all of the work that the teams do. You guys probably have what I would consider to be one of the toughest jobs in the world in what you do. And there have been some notable successes in recent years. I've got a couple of questions I'd like to ask as well, which would be good to see where we can move forward with them. The first one is a bit of a technical question. I know the number of the performance indicators change from year to year. Is that due to governmental guidance or an in-house choice? I presume it must be governmental guidance. And the second one is that I see that we, in the challenging situation we always have with looked after children, it's remaining relatively static over the last couple of years. Are there any lessons that we could learn from Neath Port Talbot's recent reduction in looked after children, from what I understand, or are those things that we've already applied in Swansea? I think I saw in a recent programme, I could be misquoting it, that they'd halved the number of looked after children. And there was a programme called Don't Take Our Kids Away, I think I can remember seeing. And I'm not sure if we ever did this, but I don't know if it is the case. I noticed that obviously still quite a few placements move from school to school quite frequently, or within placements. Are we committed in Swansea to not move people using black bin bags, as I know had been an issue that's come up in the press? Hopefully we never did that in Swansea.
Yeah, hopefully I remember all of the questions, Councillor Rice. So first of all, you're right. The performance framework set by Welsh Government does repeatedly change. So we're having to reflect some of those changes. Alongside that, though, we also can continue to try and strengthen our own arrangements to performance management and what we deem to be good. So it's a combination of the two things. Hopefully, the robust input from our dedicated scrutiny panel, make sure that the council's always got as good an understanding of those changes as possible and is able to track progress or identify potential problems early, despite the fact that those changes happen. In terms of there has been a plateauing of our looked after children numbers. You're right, we were on a steady downward trajectory up until COVID hit, and then since then we've plateaued and stayed fairly steady. Staying fairly steady has been an achievement in itself. Across some other local authorities, I've seen numbers rise. What's happened in all local authorities is that the number of children ending up in residential care has risen, and that's a particular challenge for us and all local authorities. And we all seem to have risen at the same sorts of rates. There isn't anything that's where we've got particularly exempt, as you mentioned, Neath Port Talbot, but likewise their numbers have gone up for residential placements at exactly the same rate as ours have gone up. So that's a particular challenge for us. We think that is a COVID consequence, you know, what the disruption that there was to our children's population, to the demands on families, that continues to play into the system. So that's a real area of focus for us over the next couple of years. You're right, again, to acknowledge the work that really has taken place in Neath Talbot. Between us and Neath Talbot, we're a really strong region around children's services. I think we probably started our journey on that strategy 5 years before Neath Talbot. So what Neath Talbot are celebrating, rightly so, is recent success. It's not a competition. I'm really pleased that we live in a region. We work very closely with Neath Talbot. We worked in the same health board. So I think we are committed together to being the best that we can be in supporting our children's population. We continue to share ideas about what works and what doesn't. There are some differences between you know, our very urban city arrangements and some of the differences in Neath Talbot, but we work together on you know, what we can learn from each other. But right to acknowledge the success that's taken place in Neath Talbot. Really pleased to credit that as well. I don't know if I missed a question. Bin bags, yes, that would completely contradict our approach to being the best that we could be for our children. Doesn't mean that we always get things right. You know, you mentioned stability in schools, you know, etc. as well. We don't always get things right, but it would utterly contradict our values. So we'd, you know, if anything like that happened, everybody would be up in arms rather than thinking, well, that's okay for something like that to happen. Not claiming that we always get it right for all children, but we have a very strong value base that everybody recognises.
Mr. House, Councillor Mary Jones.
Thank you, Presiding Member. On behalf of our group, I'd like to also echo the thanks in the room, both to Dave, Julie and to Amy, and also to make a comment on the and the competing demands you have with all the different acts that you now have to adhere to. And I do know the workload is so difficult, and yes, with the diminishing finance to go with it. So yes, thank you very much for all you do. We are very confident that our children and older people in the city, we hope, are in very good hands, and I'm sure that we'll see you next year with hopefully better news. Thank you.
Councillor Lyndon Jones. Thank you. Councillor Susan Jones.
I just would like to record our thanks from Scrutiny on behalf of Paxton and myself for the support that David and his staff have always given us, and for the Cabinet Member for the support for Scrutiny over the last year. At least the last year, more than the last year. Thank you.
It's been moved and seconded. I don't think there's anybody else wishing to speak, so it needs to go to a vote. So the recommendation is that that we receive and approve the annual report from the Director of Social Services for 23-24. So can I have a show of hands in support, please? Any against? Any abstentions? That's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. House, for your excellent report. Thank you. And I wish you all the best. Okay, we move on to the next item then, and I'd like to call on Councillor Peter Black. It's the Scrutiny Annual Report.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The annual report is set out in front of you. Just a few points from it. We're very pleased. We've had about 70% of the backbench councillors have actually participated in scrutiny this year, in the last year, which is very encouraging. We obviously can do with a lot more. We've had about 58 meetings of the panel and working group meetings, and some of the things we've looked at, including an in-depth inquiry into antisocial behaviour, which the majority of conclusions to which we're accepted by Cabinet. We're currently looking at an in-depth inquiry into community assets as well, which will hopefully also contribute significantly to the council's policies in the future. And of course, the performance panels and a number of earlier on, the key to scrutiny is curiosity, and we have some very curious councillors indeed. We're asking lots of questions, and hopefully we will continue to do so and help and contribute to the work of this council in doing so. So thank you, and I hope you can accept this report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. There's no vote required on this, so it's for information only. Okay, but thank you, Councillor Black, for your report. Okay. The next item is the review of the revenue reserves. I'd like to call on Mr. Ben Smith, please.
Thank you, Presiding Member. This is my annual report to yourselves on the review of reserves. You're well versed and expecting such a report. There is one recommendation in front of you that is advising that I seek you approve the report as is. The rest of the report sets out in summary form a raft of items of detail, which I will quickly canter through. An emphasis of what this report is and isn't. It is a statement of the reserves at the 31st of March 2024. There are a known number of things that will happen in year. The budget was set with a planned draw from the school's ICT reserve, a planned use of the final balance on the Economic Recovery Fund, previous council decisions, which is if there's a capital financing underspend, it is added to the capital equalisation reserve, and so forth and so forth. What it really serves to do is to discharge my duties to you to shine a light on the totality of reserves, but also to recognise the degree of reserves that the council has. And I'm sure, as has been already alluded to in previous items, as times are tough and difficult, it is always comforting to be in a position with relatively large earmarked reserves. It should come as no surprise to you, given that we await a potential reset of the public sector boundaries for budgets on the 30th of October from the new Chancellor, and then we await the settlement from Welsh Government on the 10th and 11th of December, that I'm not proposing anything radical to the report. In terms of giving you advice, I draw your attention to the section 2.1 and a quick canter through. General Fund reserves increased by 20% at outturn from 10 million to 12 million. They still remain relatively low, but it's a trade-off I accept professionally because we do have relatively large earmarked reserves, the item marked B in the table, which I will come back to in a moment. A reminder that there are then a raft of capital reserves which are carried as earmarked reserves and may only be used for capital purposes, can't be used on revenue. Equally, the ultra ring fencing of the housing revenue account means that the HRA balances cannot be used for general fund and vice versa. And there was at outturn a very substantial increase, just under £6 million to the housing revenue account for the reasons set out in the outturn report to Cabinet. So it means that we get to a position where usable cash-backed reserves at the 31st of March were over £200 million. The report reminds you in normal fashion that because local government accounting is a little bit weird, there is £1.2 billion worth of technical reserves, which are what I would colloquially refer to as the funny money and may not be used for any purpose. They are technical entries to make the accounts look like everyone else's accounts in the non-public sector, and they are therefore not considered as part of this review. As I've indicated, probably the most important bit is looking at the specific earmarked reserves, which is set out in a bit more detail in 3.11, with some annotations making clear that I do expect items to be spent. So, for example, the Transformation and Efficiency Reserve was allocated by Cabinet to be spent on HRA and ICT transformation, and I would expect that to be fully spent in due course. We are experiencing schools with some degree of overspending and forecasting a draw from reserves. that figure will almost certainly go down a bit. How much it will go down, we'll have to wait and see. But there's quite a lot of commentary at the moment in terms of the draws from schools reserves across the whole of Wales. The equalisation reserve predominantly carries the capital equalisation reserve, the device I use to smooth capital financing over a number of years, in line with the agreement to my advice in previous councils. A number of other technical reserves, some of which are ours, some of which are owned by third parties, some of which are joint ventures, and can only be used for the purposes intended. I draw your attention to the contingency fund. We were fortunate at outturn to not draw anywhere near as much from earmarked reserves as was planned, and I was able to allocate £12 million at outturn, and Cabinet agreed to that advice, and it was added to the £3 million of in-year contingency budgeted for. But as the note makes clear, Cabinet at its first quarter position, as was alluded to in terms of the Director of Social Services report and across other parts of the council, that is committed by Cabinet at first quarter. It's part of that emergency triaging decision that Cabinet took. And in similar vein, the recovery fund is the residual part of what was the established economic recovery fund, originally established with up to £45 million in. You may recall some of it was diverted to protect the council from very elevated interest rates, but the bulk of the economic recovery fund was used and always set up and planned to be fully deployed, and it reflects the residual elements of the final year of deploying on that. So earmarked reserves remain very healthy. Always a pleasing position to be in. Reserves can only be spent once. I am sure as budgets are tight in real terms, given elevated service inflation, there will continue to be debate in due course about the balance to be struck. That will be a matter for the executive to give advice to council and ultimately council to make a deliberation when it sets its budget in March 2025. My overall advice is the reserves are sufficient and adequate, and I am satisfied that no changes should be made at this point in time, given the uncertainties that face us. There will be a review once we have that reset, both as a result of the UK budget on the 30th of October and the perhaps even more important comprehensive spending review, which offers the promise of a return to multi-year settlements for local government, which will enable us ultimately, albeit once they've gone through a Welsh Government lens, to return to some more robust medium-term planning informed by more robust allocations from both UK and Welsh Government. So as I started, the report has one recommendation in front of you, which is I seek that you accept my advice to make no changes at this point in time to the various colloquially referred to jam jars. They will be used as they need to be used in due course, and I've advised you that some of them are already planned to be used. And as you see and contrast and compare with other authorities, I would always rather have reserves to be able to deploy than not have them to deploy. But a balance has to be struck, and I'm sure there will be commentary from the Auditor General in due course on the financial resilience of local government as a whole in Wales, and how all councils wrestle with the challenges of still heightened service inflation, demand and demography growing, and we'll have to wait and see what we get in terms of settlements from UK government and Welsh government. So thank you, presiding member. I will revert back. The leader may wish to comment on the report. It is a technical report, so it goes in my name, but I'm back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I call on the leader, please?
Thank you, presiding member. Can I begin by thanking Mr. Smith and his team for the work again done on this report, and for their continued management of council's finances, specifically with regard to the reserves. As Mr. Smith said, our general reserves remain at the lowest advisable level of 12 million, but we do have substantial earmark reserves, and those are there, as Mr. Smith has outlined, for specific purposes. All I would add to what Mr. Smith has said is, inevitably, given that we have no 3-year settlement at the present time, our understanding is that it's likely that we'll see a 1-year settlement from the new UK government, followed by a 3-year settlement once the comprehensive spending review is done. So therefore, we're in a bit of a unique position where we have a lack of clarity, at least in the short term, in terms of what we're likely to get in terms of funding. We'll know more on the 30th of October, and of course, Mr. Smith and I will update Council once that budget has been delivered in terms of what that is likely to mean for us in the coming year. And what I would say is that inevitably, given the pressures that we just recently talked about with Mr. Howes in terms of social care and others, there is inevitably going to be some draw from reserves in the coming years, as we try and make sure that we smooth over the amount of money that we're able to support services with. But other than that, Chair, happy to move.
Okay, can I call on Councillor Lewis, who seconded?
Yes, happy to second. Thank you, Chair.
Can I just remind members online, you should have your cameras on and be able to be seen and heard at all times. So can you make sure you can be seen, please? Thank you. Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I just want to ask a quick technical kind of question about the insurance reserve. I see obviously it's standing at 18 million at the moment. Are there any reasons for the growth over the last few years in terms of cited liabilities? I don't expect you to obviously go through what those are because they may be commercially sensitive, but any particular growth or reason or pressure or any callings on that to make it to 18 million?
So very briefly, the insurance reserve for the self-insurance as well as our external insurance claims is as much in the lap of the gods as anything else. We end up triangulating and triaging our insurance position. They have grown conveniently over time. I have commissioned a review of the level of insurance reserves, and it may well be one of the items that is included in the armoury for looking at options for resetting that amount. It's only very recently that there was a fire in one of our unoperationally used schools, and there is a reason why we do carry quite substantial insurance reserves, because we self-insure for a very large number of events and only get commercial insurance liability for big events, and also our statutory duty for employers and public liability insurance. So it is always a matter that I keep under review. Sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down. They are healthy just at the moment because they are healthy. We've actually had relatively low claims experience. It's not been added to because of specific issues around likely claims. You rightly work out that some matters might be commercially sensitive or prejudicial, so I won't go into details, but it is one of the reserves that I will look to give advice to members on in due course once I've received the formal actuarial valuation. I have commissioned such a valuation of it this year round, given that it has grown significantly.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Councillor Holly.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think that's, thank Mr. Smith. I was under the impression we self-insured for quite a lot of our claims, and that the claim level depends on the product, where, who and what is claiming. Am I correct in that?
Yes, absolutely. We do self-insure for a very large number of items, and it's only the really, really high value, high risk items, plus the things that were mandated in law, like every other employer and public body. We have to have employers and public liability insurance, but we do self-insure the vast majority of our liabilities, and it's for the big claims that we don't, and then it becomes dependent upon actual claims made. All authorities carry a level of insurance reserves and choose to self-insure because it is normally the most economically advantageous way to do it, rather than to try to get commercial cover for absolutely every eventuality, given your average local authority's got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of services and potentially therefore hundreds and hundreds of different liabilities.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Is there any more questions? No. Okay, it's been moved and seconded, so I'm going to move to the vote. The recommendation is that we approve the recommendations made in this report at sections 3, 10 and 3.11, 3.10, sorry, and 3.11. So can I have a show of hands in support, please? Anybody against? Any abstentions? That's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Before we move on to the next item, I'd like to call on Mr. Evans, please, who's going to explain the...
Thanks, the presiding member. On the next item, I've had notification that the translations facilities will be used. So for councillors who will require the Welsh translation, there are headphones in the drawers in front of you, other than those in the front row. And I will bring things around. So I'll just bring these round to you quickly. But for the rest, if you can go in your drawers and pull your headsets out. Right. Okay. So what you've all got now, if you plug them in to the headphone sockets in front of you, the language has been, I've set the language to the translation, which is number 2. So you're all on number 2. And there is a dial, and I put all the dials on the maximum volume. So if it's too loud, feel free to turn it down. I'll ask Nerys here for the translator to say a few words to ensure they can all hear.
Hello, good evening. This is the interpreter's voice. Hopefully you're able to hear English if you've selected the English channel and you've put your headphones on. Hopefully you're able to hear.
Everyone can hear that. There you are. Thank you, everybody. And we're good to go. Robert.
Thank you very much, Presiding Member, and thank you, Mr Evans. And it really is lovely to be able to present this policy to the full Council this afternoon. The document that we have here before us is the culmination of consultation and discussion with a large number of organisations, associations and others involved with the Welsh language and its future in the area served by the City and County of Swansea Council. In one sense, the scale of the challenge we currently face must be acknowledged, along with the worrying signs that can be seen from the last census figures. However, we must bear in mind that the figures for the county in its entirety obscure important differences within this authority and the fact that the percentages of Welsh speakers are far higher in some places than in others. The strategy includes work in education with targets for increasing the number of children able to speak Welsh. It also means creating opportunities in the workplace, promoting the Welsh language in our neighbourhoods, promoting awareness by ensuring the Welsh language is visible, encouraging businesses to use Welsh, providing training in Welsh and promoting the use of the language in the workplace and also in the various services delivered by the Council. The focus here is on partnership within the Council and also on working with other organisations in order to implement this strategy. I'd like to make one further comment before I conclude, and some of you will have heard me say this before. Even though the percentage of Welsh speakers in Swansea is not high, it's important to consider the total number who speak Welsh in the county, and that figure is higher still if we take into account the numbers of people who live and speak Welsh, say, within a half an hour of Swansea. This creates an opportunity to create a vibrant Welsh life, which will be an opportunity for people of all ages to enjoy opportunities to learn, work and socialise through the medium of Welsh. And this strategy will go some way towards achieving that goal. And it really is my pleasure to move this strategy this afternoon. Thank you, Presiding Member.
Diolch yn fawr, Mr Smith. Can I have somebody to, sorry, I'm hearing myself talking. Can I have somebody to move the report, please? Elliot, it's fine. You want to speak as well, Elliot, yeah?
Can I come in quickly? It appears some of the people online didn't hear the translation, which it should have come through. It looks like when they joined, they didn't have the settings set to English. We can either run through that again to make sure everyone's heard it. I'm conscious, I want to make sure that everyone's heard what's been said because it's quite important, because I'm going to be asking you to vote on this shortly. So we can either ask you to do it again in Welsh, Councillor Smith, and I apologise. And if I just explain to those online, if you press the 3 dots where it says more and choose language, and then you pick interpretation language, and you need to set that to English. So I can talk you through that again if people didn't understand that. The 3 dots where it says more, choose language and speech, then interpretation language, and then press English. I apologise for those. Yeah, I'll do a quick test. If it's anyone that hasn't heard that, if you put it in chat, I can pick it up immediately. Otherwise, we will press ahead. I think like we got 2, at least 2 have got it. I take it everybody's picked up.
Hopefully you can now hear the interpretation in the English channel on the Teams call.
Okay, there's no one saying they can't hear.
Hopefully you're not able to hear on the English channel in the Teams call.
There are dots there, just
Just a few words of English to ensure you can hear in the Teams call.
okay. Right, I nobody else is saying they can't hear, so I'm minded that you can all hear, and we'll run through that again, and apologies from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I always like to stand up in Sunday school and say something. So thank you, Presiding Member. It's a pleasure to present this policy to the full Council this afternoon. The document we have before us is the culmination of consultation and discussion with a large number of organisations, associations and others involved with the Welsh language and its future in the area served by the City and County of Swansea Council. In one sense, the scale of the challenge we currently face must be acknowledged, along with the worrying signs that can be seen from the last census figures. However, we must bear in mind that the figures for the county in its entirety obscure important differences within this organisation and authority, and the fact that the percentages of Welsh speakers are far higher in some places in Swansea than in others. The strategy includes work in education with targets for increasing the number of children able to speak Welsh. It also means creating opportunities in the workplace, promoting the Welsh language in our neighbourhoods, promoting awareness by ensuring the Welsh language is visible, encouraging businesses to use the Welsh language, providing training in Welsh, and providing the use of the language in the workplace and work in the various services delivered by the Council. The focus here is on partnership within the Council and also on working with other organisations to implement this strategy. I would like to make one further comment, and some of you will have heard me say this previously. Although the percentage of Welsh speakers in Swansea is not high, it's important to consider the total number who speak Welsh in the county, and of course that figure is higher still if we take into account the number of people who speak Welsh, say, within half an hour of Swansea. This creates an opportunity to create a vibrant Welsh life, which will be an opportunity for people of all ages to enjoy opportunities to learn, work and socialise through the medium of Welsh. And this strategy will go some way towards achieving that goal. So it really is my pleasure to be able to move this strategy, Presiding Member.
Diolch, Robert. Thank you. Councillor King.
Yeah, thank you, Presiding Member. I'm not going to attempt to follow Councillor Smith's speaking Welsh, although I've been very lucky to, twice, been very lucky to take advantage of the fantastic Welsh language learning opportunities that there are in Swansea. I consider myself a work in progress on that front. But I think that brings me to the 2 points I wanted to make. I think as the report sort of points out, in the strategy, the value of communities are really important in this, and how we build confidence, particularly in Welsh learners, in developing their skills. And I was been very pleased to support a group in St Peter's Church in Cocket that has been set up to help Welsh learners attend a Welsh language service, and that's been very successful there in nurturing that and being able to take part in the services there. And the second thing, and my portfolio really thinking of the human rights city, it's really important that this sits within the Strategic Equalities and Human Rights Action Plan and Objective 3 around reducing inequalities and barriers that exist within our communities and services, and the strategy clearly there to address that, and something that the Strategic Equality and Future Generations Board will be taking on in monitoring as part of their work. And I know myself and Councillor Smith always also value the input from scrutiny that we have when we take the annual Welsh Standards report there. Thank you, President Member. Very happy to second the report.
Okay, can I have a seconder, please? Oh, you seconded. Sorry, I'm getting things wrong yet. Don't worry about it. Okay, is there anybody wishing to speak to Councillor Black? Yeah, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can I say, first of all, it is encouraging to see that the age groups between 5 and 44 has seen an increase in use of Welsh, which clearly means good for the future. However, there are some concerning statistics in these figures, particularly the fact that over 45, there's been a drop-off in the number of Welsh. And if you look at the largest decrease by percentage, some of the areas where there have been decrease in the use of Welsh, the North County wards, Morriston, etc., which have been traditionally areas where we've had strong Welsh language presence in the past, are seeing a decrease as well. So clearly there's work to be done, both in terms of not just in terms of getting youngsters using Welsh and you know, this is concerning the 3 to 4 year olds who's dropped off, but also in terms of reinforcing those areas where we have used Welsh is used more often as well in terms of that. And also, I think in trying to make sure that people are able to use Welsh as part of their day-to-day life. And I think one of the issues around Welsh medium education about people learning Welsh at school is they may speak Welsh in school, but when they go out into the community, they don't use it so often. And that, I think, is the big challenge, isn't it? To try to make sure that people who are learning Welsh can speak it in the community in their day-to-day life. And when you have, you know, Swansea is not a Welsh language city, as evident from the figures, but it is a city where there has been traditionally strong areas of Welsh language use, and that needs to be continued. So I'm just interested how we're going to try to address the change, those trends, and how we're going to try to turn them around, particularly in terms of the older part of the population, but also in terms of those areas of Welsh strength, which seems to be where it seems to be declining. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, I thank Presiding Member, and I'd listen to what I'm going to say. I agree with everything that Councillor Peter Black has said this evening, because I think they're very valid points. It's understanding the reasons for the language change in different communities, and I represent Loughor and Kingsbridge, where that has happened and is happening from one census to another. And I think it's understanding the issue and trying to, as you emphasised, the importance of Welsh remaining a community language and giving youngsters opportunities to hear Welsh and to take part in Welsh language activities outside of school. We don't want any language to be confined to certain areas and not to others. And it's a matter of how we use that critical mass, whether it's youngsters, whether it's older people, and of course the student population in Swansea with a significant student population. And I think they've all got a contribution to make to delivering this strategy, Chair.
Councillor Linton-Jones.
All right, sorry about that. No, I won't. I would just say really good news what is happening in schools to promote that, to promote the Welsh language. The community fund is coming up later on the questions agenda, and I've used some of my community fund to promote a group in my Bishopston ward. And you certainly know the brother of the chair. He was the late First Minister Rodri Morgan, but Priest Morgan is the chair of that group, and they do a lot of work in Bishopston in promoting the Welsh language as well. And I think it is important that that sort of work takes place around Swansea.
Rob?
Yes, and endorse what Councillor Linton-Jones is saying, and also explain to people that his ability to make paper aeroplanes is second to none. You've got to say that.
Councillor Keaton.
Oh, thank you, Chair. No, I just wanted to say we could be quite negative about this, but speaking from West Cross, we have an amazing Welsh school, Llanderw, and it is pumping out Welsh speakers. And they are brilliant. And my daughter, who thought after giving up Goya School, she would be not speaking Welsh again, they had a Welsh day where in Gorsinon College where there was free food. She went for the free food, let's be obvious about this. But she thoroughly enjoyed it. She met other Welsh speakers and she uses the language regularly in college. So I think there's swings and roundabouts here. I think where we might be dropping off some places, we're building in others. And once they've got the language, they've got the language. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Is there anybody else wishing to speak? No? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. So the recommendation is that we accept the report. So can I have a show of hands, please? Anybody against? Any abstentions? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. It's now time for the councillors' questions, and before we start, I'm going to make an announcement. 7 Part A questions, and I want to ensure that each question can have a supplementary question asked. I will therefore allow 3 minutes per question, and remember that a supplementary question cannot exceed 1 minute, and equally the responses are limited to 1 minute as well. So we will be timed. Okay, so once your 3 minutes are up between question and answer, it'll move on to the next one. Okay, so don't shout at me. I'm trying to keep you all in order here. Okay, so we'll move on to the first question, and it's from Councillor Chris Holly, please. You've got 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Presiding Member. I know that the clock you have has a very limited ability to move after the first question. Thank you, Leader, for the answer to the question. Can I have a bit of clarity about this, please? Because the current private sector contribution is £1 million for the ticketing in the arena. That's what it says in the book. Just to confirm that that is currently the position. Yet on the next page, after a couple of the estimates that we will have of ROI, the retail impacts and a few other issues, we have a figure of the current level of contribution is 68.3 million. Can you explain the difference between the committed 1 million of private sector funding for the city deal and yet the contribution level of 68? What is the difference? And if you could explain that, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Presiding Member. Yeah, so I think go back to basic principles on city deal. Not every project or programme within the city deal requires private sector match. So that's the first principle. And again, the arena itself was primarily, if not entirely, a wholly public sector funded delivery. Other parts of the city deal, things like homes as power stations and some of the other projects, have much more significant requirements for private sector match. What we're laying out there, though, is if you were being very, very strict in terms of the project and its starting position in terms of government funding, local funding, public funding and private funding, then you wouldn't see very much private funding going into the arena because that was not the intention at the start. However, the catalytic effect of the private sector for the city centre and for adjoining schemes has meant that we are seeing significant investment, private sector coming in behind the council, buying up buildings, refurbishing them, and that's where we're seeing the catalytic consequential effect of the public sector investment.
We were in time as well. Well done,
just to clarify then, that wasn't the actual question that was asked. The question was asked is how much contribution did the private sector input into the city deal? Now we know that as £1 million, but the current level of contribution is 68.3 million. I'm assuming, from what you've said, is that's all the other things that are being built, all the flats and the Albert Hall and everything else, and also Palace Theatre. So that contribution is included in that 68.3.
So again, I'm not sure what you're including and what you're not, and I want to try and give an honest answer as possible, an accurate answer as possible. If you're taking the deal as a whole, that includes the projects outside of Swansea. You can see the figures there grow significantly up to nearly 500 million as we get into year 25-26. There are elements for the arena part of the Copper Bay or the digital waterfront project, which have a very small amount of private sector funding. But again, that differs between the projects being delivered by ourselves directly and our partners in Trinity St David's. But then there are consequential ones which are outside of that core city deal evaluation, which are the additional elements of private sector investment. So there are many elements to this. I'm more than happy if the Leader of Opposition wants to write to me specifically, and I can give him a specific number back in terms of what the exact question is.
I will do that, and thank you for that. Thank you very much for your assistance.
Thank you both for keeping in time, okay? So, Councillor White.
First time.
Councillor White.
Yes, thank you, President. Remember, if I could ask a question of the leader, as they say, it's great to see 7172 Kingsway now nearly completed. I haven't seen it from when visiting the city centre very frequently. I've seen it grow from the base of it to now to what it looks like, a tremendous, magnificent building. What I'd like to ask the leader, if possible, is can the leader confirm that this is assisting in raising Swansea growth prospects for next year? Thank you, Presiding Member.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor, for that question. Yes, in terms of the investment being made in the city centre, we talked earlier about the 3 sites that will come online before the end of the year. Following that, obviously, there will be the opening of the new public sector hub at the British Home Stores building, as well as we will be bringing forward proposals for the new public sector hub to be part of Copper Bay Phase 2. We're in active discussions with other partners in the region for further buildings. But even before these have been activated, PwC recently published a report, which members will have seen, where the author, I'm just going to get his name so I get it right, it is Justin Martin from PwC, commended both Swansea and Cardiff in terms of their growth and the fact that we are the 2 fastest growing cities in Wales, as would be expected. But the fact is that Swansea has rocketed up the league to become the 7th fastest growing city in the UK for next year. That is something that doesn't happen by accident. It is about improving the life chances of people in the city, the opportunities for growth, the opportunities for jobs and others. And that is only possible because of the vast investment that's being made by ourselves and then followed up by the private sector. So in terms of your answer there, if we hadn't, I think the point I'm getting to is if we hadn't of secured and delivered the city deal and then been very, very ambitious in terms of our investments and our programme for the city centre, we would not now be seeing the levels of growth that we have in the city.
Right, we're way over 3 minutes on the first question, and I will allow you to ask Councillor Rice as long as you be precise and that the answer is going to be just as precise, because otherwise we won't get through all the questions. Okay, over to you.
Please can the leader provide the council with a breakdown of the makeup of the £492 million, which is going to be in 25-26, please?
Yes.
Okay, we move on to question 2 then, and it's from Councillor Leslie Walton, Mike Lewis, Wendy Lewis. You know which one of you to get.
Thank you. No supplementary.
Move on to question 3 then, and it's from Councillor Lyndon Jones.
Could I thank the Cabinet member for his response, and can I say I hope so?
Okay, we move on to question 4 then, and that's from Councillor Peter May.
Very quick and simple question for you. Have you got enough money to meet all of the projected projects that you have?
So at the present time, we have, I think I gave this answer at the last council, but I'll repeat it. Yes, we have a capital programme which is currently, as Mr Smith confirmed at the time, affordable. We have borrowed at historically low rates in order to be able to fund that programme. We haven't deployed all of the money that we borrowed. There is still over £100 million that we have yet to deploy. The current programme of projects is affordable, but we haven't yet got to the final cost for each of those projects. So in terms of our projected costs, we believe that the entire programme is affordable. But of course, capital programmes change all the time. We take amending reports from time to time when we know the full cost of the project. Clearly, when we come to get the final costs for the second parts of Copper Bay, the costs of delivering some of our river corridor schemes, levelling up funds, all of those are subject to final costings, and at that stage we will know the final cost. But at the present time, the programme is built around what's affordable in terms of what we borrowed and what we intend to deploy.
Thank you. So if costs do rise on projects, what methods are you going to use to enable contingency for them? Will you be borrowing more money? Will you be dipping into reserves? Except if you get the drift.
Yep, you could have asked your colleague in the Uplands. He was Cabinet Member for Finance for many years, but I'm more than happy to help. There are many levers that we can pull. We could scale back the programme. That's one option. We could value engineer, which is what we do all the time. That's the most likely one that we will do, which is that we then negotiate in terms of packages of work to try and make sure that the project comes in on budget. We obviously have the ability to borrow more, and the council will need to consider that in future, because as we come to do our schools programme, for instance, because schools form part of our capital programme, we will be signing up to pull down money from the Welsh Government in terms of the next phase of schools. So inevitably we will have to borrow to fund our element of schools. Every council and every administration has done that for decades now. So that will be a necessity. And obviously there are always the use of the capital equalisation reserve, because we have set up that reserve specifically to assist us in terms of helping to deliver and smooth the delivery of some of the capital schemes. So all of those are options available to us.
Okay, we move on to the next question then, and that's from Councillor Linda James. Sorry, Mary, was that on the last question or on the next one? It's on this one. Linda needs to...
I'd like to thank the Cabinet Member for such a detailed answer. I've got no further questions.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, and I agree it's a really in-depth answer, but it came from a programme, I think it was on the news, about social workers having training, and coercive behaviour is one of these as well. It's very hidden, and even though you've made a lot of reference to domestic abuse and the different kinds of abuse, this was specifically about coercive abuse, and I wondered if there was any other course or anything that we could put in, because it's very, very difficult to detect. Again, domestic abuse, you only get if somebody's hurt. With coercive behaviour, somebody doesn't get physically hurt, maybe it's mentally hurt. So I wondered if there was anything that we can take. I think it was Birmingham that was on the actual news, which isn't probably the best example, but I know they were trying to train social workers in a different way.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm aware of I think it was a BBC piece, wasn't it, where they were talking to a newly qualified social worker who was suggesting that they hadn't had any training at all on coercion and control, and a significant proportion of the casework was linked to it. That's not a statistic that we recognise here in Swansea. Obviously, we're very aware that domestic abuse in all its forms is a key reason for a lot of the cases that our social work teams in mainly in child and family, but also in adult services do work with. As you kind of outlined, I don't think we have any specific courses around coercion and control at the moment, but if I could reiterate, it is definitely embedded in all our work on violence against women, domestic abuse and sexual violence, because you don't get one without the other in a lot of cases. Clearly it's a new legislation making that an offence in its own right, but we are obviously make sure that our social workers are very much aware of it. And just wanted to flag up as well for all councillors that Group 1 e-learning is available, and I would really encourage everybody to do those modules on the e-learning portal as well to get more information for themselves.
Alison.
It's okay, Chair. Louise covered really what I was going to say. Thanks.
Okay. Move on to the next question then, and it's from Councillor Mike White.
Yeah, I haven't got no supplementaries on that question, but I'm sure probably my colleague from the Penderry Ward might have a question.
Councillor Hennigan.
I'll be brief because you give us just a...
So you've got to be brief. Come on.
Pardon?
I said I am timing everybody, so be brief, that's all.
Yeah, no doubt you will. whenever, council takes on these major projects, whether it's the arena, Albert Hall, Alice Bar, as I call it, everybody seems to want to talk about the financial side of things, the borrowing, the debt, the resources and everything else. I think it was Oscar Wilde who actually said they know the cost of everything but values nothing. I got something on the housing. I think the cabinet members agree with me. These new houses have been built in my support me throughout Penderry has been a huge success. And I will keep this very, very short now because I will say good housing costs.
Question, Terry, not a statement.
Yes, good housing costs, bad housing costs more.
I think the question is, do I agree with that comment, presiding member? The response is, I absolutely do agree. I do feel, as this council has taken the opportunity to build, we could have built more at a lesser quality. That would have been an easy decision for us to take. But what we decided to do was build to a superior quality for the benefit of our council tenants to help address energy poverty. But also what that's done is that's enabled them to have a really good quality energy efficient homes. They deserve that. Their families and children deserve that. And I'm very proud of the track record of this administration. The question here outlines the planned investment in Penderry Ward. It doesn't note the previous investment that this administration has put in across all our council estate, over £500 million. We'll continue to do that to benefit our council tenants. We are a very respectful landlord. We take our landlord responsibilities very seriously. And I'm really pleased to point out that we do quality over quantity in this instance, and we will continue to deliver as best we can. My credit to the housing and building services teams for everything that they're doing.
Thank you, Chair. If I'm correct, at least one of these refurbishments is done as temporary housing for homeless people. And of course, Penderry Ward does have a number of flats which are used as temporary housing for homeless people. I'm just wondering, given the massive increase in homelessness in Swansea, are we looking to replace that temporary accommodation and try to put or increase it in any way whatsoever? Not necessarily in Penderry Ward, but elsewhere around the city.
Yes, the short answer is yes. We are looking to increase our temporary accommodation, and the strategy would be ideally to exit B&B and go into different, better quality temporary and emergency accommodation. And then the future aspiration would be to turn those temporary accommodation units back into permanent housing. We're not there at this point in time. We're seeing a national homelessness crisis. But we will certainly focus our minds to be able to do that whenever possible in the future. I will be bringing forward some other projects and proposals, but not ready for that today, I'm afraid, presiding member. But we are looking at all our options, as well as exploring any Welsh Government funding that is brought to us in terms of acquisitions and increasing acquisitions, which is a quick, easy win for us. And we've had some real successes there, but we do need grant funding to be able to do more.
Just ask, Chair, will those proposals be coming to Cabinet in the near future, where we can all see them?
Yes.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question, and then it's from Councillor Lyndon Jones. Thank you. So the next one is from Councillor Mary Jones.
Thank you. So I have an apology. I left a word out at the bottom. I didn't mean all buildings. I meant all council buildings. I hope you just realise that. I wasn't expecting you to be going around Swansea putting solar panels on. But I'm a little bit disappointed that we don't know the costs. Is there any way that we can have some kind of breakdown? Not to the pound, I don't mean that, but some value of the work, that we're doing.
Can I just seek clarification? Is that cost of installation that you're asking about?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I am acutely aware that installation cost is missing from the report. I can probably get you that information, but just to clarify that the solar panels that we've put on our council buildings to date have all been done through the refit programme, which is a programme where you can borrow money at 0% interest, And then when you make efficiencies in the energy bills, the efficiencies that you make go to pay off the debt. It's a loan, effectively, an interest-free loan. I can get you the information, but it's been at zero cost to this council.
From councillors Bev Hopkins and Sam.
Yes, thank you, Presiding Member. Can I thank the Cabinet Member for his response to our question? Both myself and my ward colleague have been very grateful in the past to be able to access this budget. It's a way of achieving many difficult things within our wards that we wouldn't have been able to have otherwise. Have we got some kind of assurance that hopefully going forward that we would still in years to come, as much as we can, have an opportunity to access this kind of budget, which has given every ward in Swansea a massive way of looking at different things that, and then the needs of each ward individually.
Councillor Stevens.
Yes, I can. The community budget is an outstanding budget, as all members here will know. And I will actually use this opportunity to apologise, Chair, because there's a little bit of a mistake in my response. I'm sure the multi-member wards will be thankful to know there's not 15,000 per ward. It's actually 15,000 per member per ward. So if I could, on record, to correct that, please, Chair. But yes, it's certainly something that's you know, that we're looking to commit certainly to the end of the term. It's something that, you know, a budget I feel real strongly about, as I'm sure many members do here. And I'm quite proud that this administration can provide this funding to our communities in order for members to really address those community concerns and put what residents want directly in their wards. So, yes, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stevens. The next is from Councillor Mary Jones.
I think I made a mistake putting my name down here when I was putting the question.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Would the Cabinet Member agree? I think, as he's probably just said, this is one of the best budgets that we have within the council, and it's used and the benefits of delegation to local members and to communities to spend money in their wards. With that in mind, does the council have any plans to further constrain or maybe introduce new restrictions to how the money is spent?
No, there's no plans in terms of introducing restrictions. No, not further restrictions, but we do try and adopt on various community budget spends. We try and use a fair use policy with whether we're supporting events or anything like that, and putting that process in place. But nothing new, no. So. No, just to add to what Councillor Stevens said, from a financial perspective, what we tried to do with the construction of this scheme was to give members the broadest possible use of the money to support their priorities, to make donations to local groups, to support other initiatives. So again, we've taken advice from the legal officer, from technical officers about how best to do that. We did broaden the scheme about 5 or 6 years ago, I believe. And of course, that came after we'd increased the budget in 2012 from £1,000, which was the community budget under Councillor Rice's time when he was finance member. So I'm glad he's converted to see the way in which we do things is much better. We'd increased the budget to £10,000, so 10 times the amount that you had under Councillor Rice, and then we doubled it again, or added another 50% to take it up to £15,000. So every council will get £75,000 to spend on local priorities during their period during this term.
Thanks, Presiding Member. Yeah, firstly, I'd just like to congratulate the Cabinet. I do think this is a really good policy, great use of money, and it gets money grassroots into the community. So well done keeping that together. It is one thing I do think, being able to collaborate with other ward members on buying in bulk and things like that, I think we could probably do that a little bit better. And one of the other things which is frustrating, but obviously I'm not sure what you can do about it, is the sheer price of some of the things that it cost us internally, especially highway schemes and things like that, and to the point where you don't end up doing them because it's something you want to implement, but you just think, I can't justify that when I could spend it on something else in the ward. So internal pricing, I think it's worth looking at, sharpening up some things, and also seeing
you know, what other ward members are doing with their budgets, and can we sort of buy in bulk and do things better? So I think there's some things we can look at. Thanks.
The next question then, sorry, Mary, I had to go back just now. Councillor Mary Jones.
Thank you. It's my fault. I put my name down first. I shouldn't have on all these. That was a mistake. Thank you very much to the Cabinet Member for the response. And I'm not going to ask a question. I'm just going to praise you for, thank you about the Brangwen Hall as well, that it looks now as if it's starting to flourish, because, you know, we were quite concerned that after COVID it wasn't picking up, but in your answer it says that it has. So thank you.
That would be Councillor Elliott King. Dr. King is always working to improve the Brangwen Hall. So well done, Elliott.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Bennett, I remembered you this time.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Will the Cabinet Member be able to comment on any consideration that's been given for the use of Prince of Wales dock for hotels at all?
For what now? In which way?
For hotels.
Hotels. I don't know the details. People have asked if they could look at hotels on the Prince of Wales dock, but there's no application in before us.
On to question 11 then, and that's from Councillor Fiona Gordon.
No supplementaries, just thanks and praise again for everybody involved in the outstanding results, how Swansea did compared to the Welsh average. Thank you.
Those questions, and we've gone through it in an amazing time tonight. So thank you all for sticking to the rules. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, thank you all, everybody, and have a safe journey home.